The new Sacks Chumash, published by Koren in Jerusalem, is billed as Rabbi Jonathan Sacks's magnum opus. With me in the studio today is Alan Sacks, Rabbi Sacks's younger brother, who, among other things, made Aliyah with his family in 1981 and lives in Jerusalem, and sits on the Rabbi Sacks Legacy Board in both the United States and the United Kingdom, and is president of the board in Israel. Welcome, Alan Sacks, to the JNS studio.
Hello.
Tell us about your view of the new Chumash.
Well, I think and I hope that it'll be one of the most important Hebrew publications for the next 50 years. The book, the Chumash, is a culmination of a life's work on the part of Rabbi Sacks, synthesized into what is a rather hefty book of more than 1,500 pages. But I think that anyone who takes the time, and I imagine it'll take time over years to absorb what everything that Rabbi Sacks has to say there, will come out with an added dimension of what it means to study the Torah in contemporary circumstances.
You and I have both seen, unfortunately we don't have a copy here, the new edition. It's magnificent. What struck you when you picked it up for the first time?
First of all, its weight, but it's beautifully produced. I accompanied my brother. I followed, sometimes close, sometimes afar, 15 years or more of weekly commentary on the Torah. And what we can see here is the integration of all of those thoughts in one volume. And as I say, it will take time to learn. It's something to study. It's not a superficial read, but it really does give a dimension in the way that his weekly commentaries used to give a dimension to the weekly parasha, to the weekly portion, which shows, as my brother tried to say, that the Torah is a commentary on life, and life is a commentary on Torah. It's extraordinary how contemporary the weekly parasha turned out to be in the hands or under the fingertips of my brother. And this is what comes across so beautifully in this work.
He was such a special man, but of course, you knew him so well growing up with him. Can you share with us what it was like to grow up with Rabbi Sacks?
Well, he was 8 years older than I am, and already by the time I was 10, 12, a teenager, he was more or less out of the house. So if I want to describe Rabbi Sacks, it's Rabbi Sacks as a young man and then maturing into the rabbinate and then achieving the status that he achieved. It's interesting to wonder where he got some of his characteristics from. He was obviously a brilliant student, widely read, highly cultured in Western culture before he entered the world of Torah. And I think that is so important because he knew Western culture so extraordinarily well, and then absorbed his Jewish learning and then viewed the world through the lens of his Jewishness. But if I go back a little further and give some credit to our late father, there were certain rules by which our father led his life, and one of which was dignity, and another which was pride. And those two themes run through Rabbi Sacks from his youth to his maturity as a rabbi, to his greatness as a global religious moral leader. He always behaved with dignity in every situation. I never saw him lose his temper. I never heard him curse, ever, and even in a private, intimate conversation. And he had burning pride in his Jewishness. And I think those two he took from our father. And among his many attributes, I think those two shine. He was, of course, a great speaker. He began the debating in school. He was a debating champion, and then in the Cambridge Union, he was extremely talented. One thing I would also add, though, many of his talents did not come to him naturally. He worked and worked and worked at improving his talents at so many different aspects. Hard work. It wasn't just, a gift. He was gifted, but he worked incredibly hard to develop those gifts, to perfect those gifts.
Mm-hmm. Did he discuss with you before he died his future plans and perhaps this Chumash?
Yes. His death came as a surprise in the sense that he did not realize how ill he was until very close to his death. But my brother was always asking me, and when I mean always, I mean for decades, what's the next thing I have to do? What's the next thing I have to do? He didn't want to rest. He never rested. He was always wondering, what is the next issue to be dealt with? Mm-hmm. I'm mildly angry with him because I kept saying to him, come to Israel, learn to speak Hebrew like a native because you have millions of people waiting for you here. But he was always interested. And I think he did understand that his major project, which he began before his illness, was the Chumash, as the next and perhaps the last major project that he was going to undertake beyond all of the other activities that he was involved in terms of diplomacy and speaking on behalf of Israel and educating and so on. But yes, the Chumash was his major project.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he accomplished so much in his life. And as you say, he was so eloquent, both as a public speaker and in his writing. What do you think set him apart from everyone else? In your mind? I should point out now that you are obviously a solicitor by training, from a lawyer, as we say in Israel, working for a top law firm, and it's interesting how the brothers came to live in Israel, but he stayed on in England.
You have a few different topics in there. He was obviously very, very smart, but we say in Ethics of the Fathers, in Pirkei Avot, Ezeu Chacham halomed mikol adam. I think what set my brother apart from perhaps certainly the vast majority of the rabbis with whom I come into contact, is that he wanted to learn from everybody. He never thought he knew the answers. If he was going to debate someone who was an expert, or he was going to write about psychology, sociology, mental health, the issues which were the moral issues of the day, poverty, he studied them. He studied them in immense detail. His reading was wide, varied, and he was never superficial in anything that he did. So he wanted to learn. He wanted to learn from our kids, from my children. When he'd spend time with us, he would want to know, what are you studying? What are you learning? He was fascinated to hear from other people. He wanted to learn from the best. I remember once walking back with my fourth child who was studying psychology.
You have 6 children.
Yes, I'm blessed with them, yes. So I was studying psychology, and walking along, I hear my brother in front of me with my son saying, so what area do you want to specialize in? He says, CBT. He says, you must know my good friend Aaron Beck. And he'd had to get into the world of psychology in order to deal with many social issues in his community. And he'd actually gone to the best of the best of the best to study from them and learn from them. Mm-hmm. And he respected them. There was no sense of superiority, of elitism, that the rabbis know the answer. On the contrary, he always wanted to learn. And I think that's what set him apart, but what gave him the gift of being able to converse with so many people on so many different topics. in a way that impressed them that he was a man who was serious and not superficial or an amateur.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to try and connect, if I can, this insatiable curiosity and the fact that he was so interested in everyone he met when he himself was so interesting. He also managed to build bridges across religions with the royal family when he was chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, and wherever he went in the world, he managed to somehow connect with people.
I don't think that was natural, that came naturally to him. As I say, he had to work on certain aspects of his personality, for sure. But he treated the leading figures in other religions with the dignity that he felt they deserved, with the respect that they deserved, and was never apologetic. He would go to European Parliament, to Congress, to the Houses of Parliament in the UK, as a proud, loyal Jew, proud of who he was and proud of the people whom he was representing. There was never an apology for who he was. And I think one of his phrases was, people respect Jews who respect their Judaism. And he always exuded pride in being Jewish, and people respected that.
Mm-hmm. I think whenever we think of Rabbi Sacks today, it's one of those things that you don't really know, but you say to yourself, I wonder what he would have thought of October 7th and the situation, not just in Israel today, but around the world, the rising antisemitism, etc. Do you ever think about that?
I think about that, and I'm often asked about that. It was probably 10 years ago or more that my brother went to the European Parliament and delivered an extraordinary speech decrying anti-Semitism. He says, how is it that 50 or 60 years after the Holocaust, people are running through the streets shouting death to Jews? He wrote a lot about that in his last years. He was shocked. He was truly shocked. October 7th would have come as an incredible emotional blow to my brother. He was a very sensitive person. Again, people who weren't close to him didn't realize how sensitive he was. He was this public figure, but he was very sensitive personally, emotionally. And I think for a very short time he would have been stunned. But then he would have decided, okay, what do I have to do? As he always did, what do I have to do? And he would have come to visit Israel numerous occasions. But he would also have gone on a crusade to all of the world's media where he was deeply respected and where doors were open. The Times of London or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the BBC or CNN, and would have gone on to explain, I think even till today, when of course Israel is really under the hammer from global media, he would have gone on to explain why Israel is behaving as it is. He would say that Israel has to live up to its moral standards, but Israel is being judged by double standards, and would have, I think, done a job which unfortunately Israel isn't doing too well today for itself.
Yes, I mean, when you think about his eloquence and how he articulated things so beautifully, we have very few people speaking so well for Israel around the world, and sometimes it's unfortunate that they're not even Israelis who are our best spokespeople,
or even Jewish. I mean,
Jewish. Yes,
our best friends are we know who they are, and they're outstanding spokespersons, and they are outstanding friends of Israel, and we're deeply indebted to them because someone has to do that job, and we're not doing it ourselves.
People like Douglas Murray and others who Rabbi Sacks
Neil Ferguson, Richard Kemp. Mm-hmm. Yes.
One of my personal recollections of Rabbi Sacks is he was awarded the Jerusalem Prize, and I met him there, and also at Rabbi Steinsaltz's birthday celebration. And I remember him getting very nervous every time he spoke. And I thought to myself, this man who is the best spokesperson for the Jewish people in the whole world gets nervous, then I can get nervous too.
I said that Rabbi Sacks was very thorough. He always prepared. I think that being self-confident is a dangerous thing.
Mm-hmm.
My brother would get up in shul, if I was occasionally with him in London, and he'd be shaking. Having done this for 30 years and wowed every crowd, he would get up shaking and come back down afterwards and sit next to me and say, "Was that okay?" But that constantly checking and worrying about yourself is part of the greatness. Again, I want to refer to my father, my late father. My late father was a lover of music. That's something that my brother took, and the rabbi was a great lover of music. But my father was a great admirer of Isaac Stern, the violinist. And he said his greatness was he makes it look so easy. And if you look in the sporting world, I'm not sure which audience I'm speaking to, but you take a genius like Lionel Messi, he never made it look difficult. That was his greatness. It looked so easy. Well, for my brother, things which were hard, and he worked very hard at, but they looked so easy. And that's a sign of, I think, greatness.
Absolutely. It looked like it just came so easily and naturally to him. And in his latter years, he started recording fantastic videos and messages to the Jewish people and to others, to non-Jews as well, all over the world. And I keep thinking what his message would be today.
It's very easy for me to speak as if I was him, and I'm always reluctant to do that. When they say, "What would Rabbi Sacks say?" Unfortunately, I can't tell you. But I know that my brother was a lover of some of the speeches of American presidents. And he often used to quote, I think it's the second inaugural of Abraham Lincoln, and you'll forgive me if I get this wrong, but at the height of the Civil War in America, he said something along the lines of, "With charity to all and malice to none, we must bind the wounds of the nation." And I'm sure that my brother would say now that the greatest threat to Israel is its internal divide. And we need to bind the wounds of the nation. We need to come together, because only that way will we be able to survive. We'll deal with our enemies. Our problem is dealing with ourselves. And that would be his message. He realized that he was an outsider here. He couldn't come here and wouldn't come here to preach to anybody. But if he had any message, it was, you have to get together. When conversation ends, democracy dies. You have to talk to each other. You have to forgive each other. You have to be reconciled and move forward together, because if we can't deal with that, then we will never deal with our enemies.
Oh, that certainly is a powerful message. And so if we can end by just going back to the Chumash, because again, for Rabbi Sacks, everything was rooted in the Torah, as you said initially. How would he see the relevance of the Chumash and the commentaries? And we also have all kinds of other extra things in this Chumash that give added value. How would he see that as a way to convey his message to the world today, almost 2 years after October 7th?
My brother tried in all of his writings on the Torah to show its contemporary relevance. It is not a history book. It was never a history book. When he began the very first of his weekly commentaries, and must be close to 20 years ago now, he began with an introductory essay or an introductory note in which he said, many of the commentators look at the words of the Torah through a microscope. I want to look at it through a telescope. We need to see a big picture. big picture of society, of contemporary society. Because, and I'm not speaking for my brother, but I'm sure he would say that the ultimate purpose of the Torah is to build a society in this world, not the next, build a society based on justice, kindness, honesty, and integrity. And every story you'll find in the Torah somehow or other relates to a contemporary relevant issue, which is essential to building a society here and now today based on tzedek, mishpat, chesed, v'rachamim, justice, honesty, integrity, and kindness. So this is not a lesson in history. This is a lesson in contemporary relevance, seen through the lens of what the Bible is trying to teach us. And I think that anybody who will take time, and I'm not belittling it, will take time to work through, will see how relevant the stories from 3,000 years ago, how relevant they are to the needs of society today.
Thank you so much, Alan Sacks. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
And it was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.